My entire life was spent in the mansion my parents built, where every wall held a piece of our family's story. At 75 years old, my nephew decided to sell it, claiming I was no longer capable of making decisions. Have you ever felt humiliated by the very people who were supposed to protect you? That's when I discovered, hidden inside my mother's old diary, a document guaranteeing me lifelong rights to the property. With calm strength, I faced my nephew and said, "You tried to erase my story, but you forgot. These walls hold secrets far greater than your greed." Sitting on the porch at sunset, I realized I wasn't a defeated old woman. I was the true guardian of the home that raised me. The front porch always creaked in the same spot, right where Dad used to pause, to wipe his boots. That sound, even now, wrapped around me like an old sweater. I remember watching him through the window, his strong hands always carrying something home. Groceries, flowers for Mom, or a piece of wood to fix something himself. That house was his heartbeat, and mine too. Every corner held a story. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and warm apples every Sunday morning. Mom's laughter echoed between the walls, soft and steady, like a lullaby only our home knew how to hum. My room still had the wallpaper with tiny roses we picked together. I never had the heart to change it. It felt like she was still in the room every time the light hit the wall. Just right. The backyard was our jungle, our kingdom, our sanctuary. My brother and I once buried a time capsule under the swing set. A shoebox filled with dreams we thought we'd chase forever. Some days I stood near that old tree and swore I could hear our younger voices again. Ghosts, not of sorrow, but of joy too full to be forgotten. That house didn't just shelter us. It shaped us. It held our traditions, our birthdays, our tears. When people talk about home, they often mean a place. For me, it meant people, and the echoes they left behind. And I wasn't ready to silence those echoes yet. But just as the sun filtered through, the lace curtains warming my hands, his shadow appeared in the doorway, and everything shifted. He stood by the fireplace like he owned the air between us. My nephew, Derek. Once the boy who brought me daisies from the garden, now looked at me like a problem to be solved. "You've lived all you needed to here, Auntie. It's time to move on." His voice was smooth, rehearsed, like he'd practiced it in front of a mirror. But no amount of polish could hide the greed in his eyes. I blinked at him, unsure if I'd heard right. "Move on?" I asked. "From what? My memories? My life?" He didn't flinch. Instead, he laid out the papers on the dining room table. The same table where we used to carve pumpkins and say grace. Now it held legal documents and betrayal. He spoke of buyers, of market value, of how I was no longer fit to decide, as if age had erased my voice, as if the creases on my hands meant I couldn't hold my future. I tried to speak, but my throat closed. All I could do was stare at the chair where my mother once sat, brushing crumbs into her palm, humming hymns. Under her breath, Derek's tone turned gentle, almost patronizing. "It's for the best," he said. "We'll get you someplace quieter, safer." But I heard the subtext. Smaller, farther, forgotten. He was already erasing me, one signature at a time. He never asked what I wanted, never thought to. When the front door clicked shut behind him, I stood in that quiet house and felt like a ghost in my own home. That night, sleep never came. The walls felt tighter, the rooms colder, like the house itself was holding its breath. I wandered through the hallways barefoot, the wooden floor creaking under me like it remembered I was still there. My hands slid across the wallpaper as if trying to feel my parents' presence through it. And when my fingers brushed the basement door, something inside me said, "Go down." The air changed as I stepped onto the first stair, damp, earthy, and thick with time. The scent of cardboard, mildew, and forgotten years. The light flickered as I reached the bottom, and in that dim orange glow, I saw stacks of old boxes covered in dust and silence. I moved slowly, each step stirring the quiet like a prayer. I wasn't looking for anything. I just couldn't stay upstairs with the ache. I opened the first box, then another. Faded photographs, Christmas ornaments, a yellowed scarf that still smelled faintly of rosewater. Every item felt like a piece of my life whispering, "Remember me." I sat on the cold concrete, holding a worn teddy bear, and cried into the past, the kind of cry you don't hear, the kind that drains out slowly from inside you. Then behind a stack of albums, something caught my eye. A small leather-bound book, the edges frayed, the strap brittle. I knew that book. I hadn't seen it in decades, but I knew it like I knew my own breath. My mother's journal. She used to write in it every night, curled on the couch with a blanket and a cup of tea. She never let me read it. "Someday," she'd say, "when the time is right." I sat cross-legged on that basement floor, fingers trembling, and opened the journal to the first page, not knowing it would change everything. The ink had faded, but her handwriting was unmistakable. Delicate loops, careful strokes, just like the way she used to brush my hair. I ran my fingers over the letters as if touching them could bring her closer. The first page was dated 1954, the year they moved into the house. "Today we laid the last brick," she wrote. "Your father smiled with his whole heart. This house will be our forever." My throat tightened. I could almost hear her voice again. Every page after that was a window into her soul. She wrote about my first steps, how I cried during thunderstorms, how my laugh reminded her of wind chimes. Her words held no grand drama, only the quiet beauty of family, of love wrapped in the ordinary. As I read, the basement disappeared. I was back in her lap, listening to her hum while she sewed. I felt safe, held, remembered. Then the tone shifted. Later entries were tinged with worry, about aging, about who would protect the house after they were gone. One line made my hands go cold. "I fear the world will forget the roots we planted here, that someone might one day see only wood and brick, not the love woven into it." She knew. Even then, she knew this day might come. There was one night I remembered clearly. A storm had knocked out the power, and she read to me by candlelight. She said, "This house listens. One day, it'll speak to you when you need it most." I used to think it was just a bedtime story. Now, holding her journal in my lap, I wasn't so sure. I turned to the very last page, and there, waiting in her familiar ink, was something she'd never spoken aloud. The paper was thinner at the back, almost translucent with time. The ink bled slightly at the edges, but her handwriting remained steady, like she had saved her calmest voice for this moment. I took a deep breath before reading, sensing it was something sacred, something meant only for me. "If someday they try to take you from this house," she wrote, "know that your father and I planned for that possibility. This home was never just walls and doors to us. It was a promise, and promises are meant to be protected." My pulse quickened. I leaned in closer, reading every word twice to be sure. She spoke of a drawer in my father's old office, the heavy oak desk he always kept locked. "Look in the bottom drawer, taped beneath the lining. We hid a document there, legal, binding, your right to remain, as long as your heart needs this place." It is yours. By law and by love. My mouth went dry. The air in the basement thickened, as if her spirit had filled the space around me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders one last time. I sat there, stunned, the journal resting gently on my lap like a sleeping bird. For a moment, I couldn't move. I could hear the hum of the old pipes, the ticking of the heater, and above all, the echo of her voice in my mind. This house listens. Maybe she had always known this day would come. Maybe that's why she wrote it all down. Not just the legal truth, but the emotional map to guide me back to myself. Her love hadn't ended when she left this world. It had simply shifted form. Slowly, I stood up, legs trembling but firm beneath me. I cradled the journal to my chest as I climbed the basement stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last, not with fear, but with purpose. A purpose I hadn't felt in years. The house seemed to respond. The wood groaned under my feet. The lights flickered gently, as if guiding me forward. I knew exactly where I needed to go. And more than that, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Hope. But as I reached for the office door and turned the knob, it wouldn't budge. The door was stuck, swollen with age, or maybe stubborn with memory. I pressed my shoulder against it, gave a soft shove, and it finally creaked open, the hinges groaning like they hadn't moved in years. The office was exactly as he'd left it. The scent of old tobacco, cedarwood, and paper filled the air. Dust floated in the slant of morning light like tiny ghosts dancing. His chair still pushed in neatly. The desk, massive and unmoved. I ran my hand over its surface, remembering the sound of his pen, the way he used to tap it twice before signing anything. My fingers traced the edge of the drawer, the one she had mentioned. Bottom, lined. I pulled it open slowly, expecting resistance, but it glided out smoothly, too smoothly. Inside were faded folders, an old ruler, and a cracked magnifying glass. Nothing unusual. But I remembered her words, taped beneath the lining. Carefully, I peeled back the green velvet that lined the drawer's base. And there it was, a plastic envelope, yellowed at the corners, tightly sealed and marked with his name and a date. March 12, 1982. My breath hitched. That was the year he had his heart attack, the year he rewrote the will. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. Inside was a notarized document, a legal addendum granting me lifetime residency of the property, signed by both my parents and certified by the county clerk. Tears blurred the words, but I could still make them out. For as long as our daughter wishes to remain, no sale, transaction, or claim shall override her right to this home. My knees nearly gave out. I sank into the old chair, pressing the paper to my chest, like it was a shield against every doubt and every cruel word Derek had spoken. I sat there for a long time, letting the quiet fill me. The walls didn't feel heavy anymore. They felt alive, as if the house itself had been holding its breath all these years, waiting for me to uncover the truth. The light shifted through the blinds, brushing across my face with a gentleness that felt like a blessing. I looked at the paper again, steadier this time. It wasn't just proof. It was a love letter from the past, one that spoke louder than betrayal. And just as I began to fold the document, footsteps echoed down the hall. Slow, deliberate, approaching the office door. The handle turned with a quiet click, and then he stepped inside. Derek, with his phone in one hand, and that smug certainty in his eyes. "I figured you'd be in here," he said, like he was catching a child sneaking cookies. But when he saw what was in my lap, the color drained from his face. I didn't move. I wanted him to see me, not as the fragile old woman he tried to manipulate, but as the daughter of the very people who built this house with their bare hands and their boundless hearts. He opened his mouth to speak, but I raised my hand. I stood slowly, letting the silence fill every inch of that room. Then I unfolded the document and laid it gently on the desk. "You forgot something," I said, my voice low but unwavering. "This house doesn't belong to you." It never did. He stepped closer, squinting at the paper, and when he realized what it was, what it meant, his jaw clenched. "This can't be real," he muttered. "You're confused. This is old. It doesn't matter." "It matters," I said. "Legally, emotionally, historically. This isn't just paper, Derek. It's my right, my parents' protection, their final promise." I could see the panic rising in his eyes, his confidence unraveling thread by thread. He tried to reach for the document, but I was faster. I slid it into a folder and pressed it against my chest. "You tried to erase me," I whispered, "but this house remembers, and now, so will you." For the first time, he didn't have an answer. He just stood there, smaller somehow. No threats, no justifications, just silence. I walked past him without another word, the sound of my footsteps, the only punctuation. I opened the front door wide and turned back just once. "You can leave now," I said. "You've done enough damage for one lifetime." The wind moved through the trees like applause, and he walked out into it. Not in triumph, but in defeat. And when the door shut behind him, I leaned against it, heart pounding, eyes wet, and felt the house breathe with me, like we had both just survived the same storm. That afternoon, I made tea the way my mother used to. Strong, no sugar, a splash of lemon. The sun filtered through the kitchen windows, warm against my skin, and for the first time in weeks, I felt grounded. I carried my cup to the front porch, the same one where my father used to sit with a newspaper folded neatly in his lap. I eased into the rocking chair, its gentle creak in rhythm with my breath, and let the quiet settle around me like a shawl. Birds fluttered near the feeder, and the old oak tree swayed softly in the breeze. Everything felt familiar, but not static. The house hadn't frozen in time. It had waited, patiently, for me to remember who I was and what this place meant. I wasn't a prisoner of nostalgia. I was its steward. I looked out over the yard, eyes tracing the swing set, the cracked stone path, the flower bed my mother once tended. Every blade of grass, every loose shutter, every creaky stair, they were all part of my story. I thought of the people who had passed through these walls, my parents, my brother, even Derek, once sweet and small, chasing lightning bugs barefoot in the dusk. This house had held generations, and somehow it had held on to me too. Not just physically, but emotionally, in ways I hadn't realized until I was forced to fight for it. My parents didn't just build a home, they built a sanctuary, and now I was its guardian. I glanced down at the journal resting on my lap, the final page still marked. Her words echoed again. "As long as your heart needs this place, it is yours." And it did. My heart still beat for this place, for the creaks in the floor, the echo in the stairwell, the comfort of knowing who I was in every corner. I wasn't stuck in the past. I was rooted in it. As the sun dipped low and bathed the porch in amber light, I closed my eyes and smiled. I hadn't just defended a home. I had reclaimed my place in the world. That evening I walked room by room, letting the silence guide me. Not an empty silence, but a full one. Like the walls were humming with everything they'd seen, everything they still held. I paused at the piano where my father once played, lullabies after long days. Touched the dented banister we'd all slid down as kids. Even the wallpaper I used to think was outdated now felt like part of the house's skin. Worn, resilient, unapologetically itself. Upstairs, I lingered in the doorway of my old bedroom, the rose-patterned wallpaper, the faint smell of lavender, the soft indent in the mattress that still remembered me. I sat on the edge and looked out the window. The trees had grown taller. The world had changed. But somehow, this place had stayed. True. It had waited for me to come back. Not physically, but with all of me. Heart, memory, voice. I knew then that legacy isn't just about bloodlines or last names. It's about the love we leave behind, the protection we build, the whispers we plant between bricks and floorboards. My parents had given me more than shelter. They had given me a foundation to stand on, even when others tried to bury it. And now, I would be the one to protect it, quietly, fiercely, completely. The house didn't need to be restored. It needed to be remembered. And I wasn't just a woman clinging to the past. I was a witness, a storyteller, a guardian of something bigger than myself. In this home, my parents' love still lived, and now, so did mine. So if you ever feel like someone tried to erase you, like your story didn't matter, remember this. Some walls speak louder than words, and some homes never let go. Where are you watching from? Tell me your city and age in the comments. And if this story reminded you of home, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There's more where this came from.